Battered by storms and mourning the 6 men lost to Scylla, Odysseus and his surviving crew approached the lush shores of Thrinacia. This is the sacred pasture of Helios, the sun god, where his prized cattle graze in eternal peace. Odysseus is haunted by the warnings of the prophet Tiresias and the sorceress Circe. Both were absolute. Any harm to these animals would bring total destruction to the ship and every man aboard. Hoping to bypass the danger entirely, Odysseus orders his men to row past the island without landing. He wants no part of the temptation Thrinacia offers. But his men are at their breaking point. Eurylochus confronts him, arguing that the crew is too exhausted to handle the sea at night. They need solid ground and a single night of sleep, or they may not have the strength to row at all. To prevent an outright mutiny, Odysseus agrees to anchor in a sheltered cove for 1 night. However, he extracts a heavy price. Every man must swear a solemn oath not to touch a single animal, eating only the rations they have left. Odysseus has managed to prevent a mutiny for now, but in doing so, he has placed a starving crew directly alongside the one thing he was told would destroy them. The planned 1-night stay becomes a trap. A violent storm rolls in, and for an entire month, the winds make it impossible for the ship to leave the island shores. Circe's provisions are eventually exhausted. The men are forced to hunt small birds and scavenge for fish, but it isn't enough to sustain dozens of sailors. This chart shows the 30-day window the crew spent trapped in the cove. As ship supplies drop to 0, crew desperation spikes into the red. Reaching the final week, they hit a breaking point, starvation overriding the memory of their oath. Seeking guidance from the gods, Odysseus leaves his men to pray at a secluded spot inland. But the long weeks of crushing stress take their toll, and he eventually falls into a deep, completely unintended sleep. Without their captain's presence to hold the line, the pressure of the environment finally overcomes the crew's discipline. Quietly, this moment of sleep is the critical failure. By succumbing to his own exhaustion, Odysseus leaves the herd and his crew's fate entirely unprotected. Eurylochus seizes the opportunity. He tells the men that if they are to die, it is better to die quickly by a god's lightning bolt with a full stomach than to waste away slowly and miserably on a beach. The starving crew eagerly agrees. They round up the cattle, slaughter them with ritual care, and roast meat over fires. Odysseus wakes to the smell of roasting fat. As he returns to the shore and sees the smoke, he realizes immediately that the one thing he was warned to avoid has already happened. The meat is already on the fire. The transgression is complete, and the crew is now waiting for a punishment they can no longer escape. High above, Helios is consumed with fury. He goes before Zeus and threatens to take the sun down to the underworld, shining only for the dead, unless the sailors pay for their crime. Zeus cannot allow the world to go dark. To satisfy Helios and maintain the order of the world, he agrees to destroy the ship and everyone on it. For 6 days, the crew is haunted by omens. The skins of the dead cattle crawl across the sand, and the meat on the spits begins to bellow and moan, as if the animals are still suffering. On the 7th day, the winds finally die down. The crew, desperate to leave the cursed island, immediately launches the ship and sets sail. They don't get far. Once they are out of sight of land, Zeus strikes. A single bolt of lightning hits the mast and shatters the hull, throwing every man into the sea. Every man who survived the war at Troy and the monsters of the deep is drowned. Only Odysseus remains, clinging to a piece of wreckage for 9 days, until he washes up on the shores of Calypso's island. Odysseus is alive, but he is now a leader without a crew, a man who survived the disaster only to carry the weight of its prophecy alone. Odysseus wakes up coughing up salt water. His body is battered, his entire crew is gone, after 9 days clinging to wreckage, without food or rest. He is washed ashore on Ogygia. It is a remote, hidden island ruled by the nymph Calypso, daughter of the Titan Atlas. and it sits far beyond a reach of any mortal map. Calypso finds him on the shore and nurses him back to health. As she falls in love with him, she makes him an offer that no other mortal has ever received: literal immortality and an existence free from aging, suffering, or death. For a veteran of the Trojan War who has spent years witnessing slaughter and loss, this is a permanent release from the physical and mental pain of a soldier's life. Yet even as his wounds heal, Odysseus remains detached from the paradise surrounding him. His thoughts stay fixed on the sea, searching for the horizon of his home. He is anchored to Ithaca. Without his wife, Penelope, and the son he barely knows, the lush meadows and fragrant cedar forests of Ogygia offer him no comfort. For a man defined by his purpose and his family, these perfect surroundings function as a gilded exile. This chart compares two incompatible experiences of time. Calypso's is a steady, horizontal line, her world unchanging. Beside her, Odysseus's timeline curves steeply downward. Every day is finite. He is haunted that Penelope and Telemachus are also aging, missing seasons of their mortal lives. While his body remains youthful through Calypso's magic, his grief makes him feel as though he is aging faster than any man alive. On Mount Olympus, the gods who oversee mortal fates finally turn their attention to this stalemate. Athena pleads with Zeus to intervene. She argues that keeping a hero trapped for a nymph's desire violates the natural order, denying Odysseus's right to his own life. Zeus spots an opening, while Poseidon, Odysseus's primary antagonist, is away feasting in Ethiopia. He decides to act while the sea god is distracted. Zeus sends Hermes to Ogygia with a direct command. The nymph must release Odysseus and assist him in his departure. Calypso is devastated, but she respects the divine hierarchy. She tells Odysseus he is free to go, acknowledging that her offer of eternal life cannot compete with his desire for home. In a final act of devotion, she provides tools and timber, along with the essential supplies and favorable winds he will need to survive the open sea. The intervention from Olympus succeeds because Zeus acknowledges a truth that Calypso could not. A mortal's devotion to their own fragile, limited life can outweigh the promise of eternity. Odysseus sheds his role as a pampered guest and returns to the work of a survivalist. He spends days in grueling labor, felling trees and lashing logs together, creating a sturdy raft. He shares a quiet, final goodbye with Calypso, showing respect for her care even as he prepares to abandon the safety she provided. As he pushes his raft into the surf, he is making a conscious choice to trade eternal youth for the uncertainty of the sea. The peace does not last. Poseidon, returning from his travels, spots the small raft and realizes his enemy is attempting to escape his reach. The god of the sea unleashes his full rage. He conjures a storm of churning waves and heavy winds to test if Odysseus's resolve is strong enough to survive the path he has chosen. Odysseus faces the gale because he values a real, mortal life, with all its pain and its inevitable end, more than the sterile safety of a paradise where he does not belong.